Welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and today we are going to be talking about hope beyond dementia, how to empower families through storytelling. And we are so lucky to have just a fabulous author with us. She's been on the show before, but she's absolutely brilliant. So I'll introduce you to her shortly. I always like to give a couple of shout outs. And first, I want to just remind you all to please visit alzheimerspeaks.com. We have a ton of free educational resources, so don't miss that. Some's written, some's audio, some's video, some you can download. So take a peek at that. And also check out our sister company, dementiamap.com, which is a global resource directory. I also want to tell you about Twiddle. If you're not familiar, sensory care is so critically important. So many people nowadays are complaining about anxiety and depression. And dementia, has a high level of that, especially around sundowning. And the Twiddle muffs can make a difference for you and especially for them in terms of just giving them something to fidget with and calm down. And you can actually get 25% off their products by using the code AS25. So please take advantage of that. They also make a product called Adaptorap, which works great for people who have limited mobility, maybe can't, reach their arms up, or they're combative during dressing. It's something that is a fleece garment. It all closes in the back. It's very simple. And it can just tap things down and make life a lot easier. Again, you can get 25% off that product as well. All you have to do is go to their website, which is the number 4 and then twiddlesplural.com. Well, Jennifer, I'm so excited to have you back on the show today. And you are just an amazing author, and you've just got a heart of gold. And I can't wait for you to be able to share that with our audience in terms of what you're doing and why you're doing it. But I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself, if you don't mind, to our audience.
Thanks, Lori. I'm so excited to be here and to be back with you. I feel the same about what you're doing in this space. It's so amazing. My dad was diagnosed with Lewy Body Dementia in 2003. And it was at a time when there weren't any resources, and our family was kind of dealing through things that we couldn't find any information on things that, adults couldn't understand. So to watch my young children try to struggle to understand these changes, it was very disheartening. And at the time when you're going through it, you're not really thinking like how you can make a difference. But once you're through it and you see that you've made it through the other side, you find some purpose in that what you've been through and through that pain. And I know it sounds cliche, but that's what happened. I found my purpose as being a children's book author after my dad's battle with Lewy Body Dementia.
Yeah, no, I totally understand, because I never saw myself in this space. I didn't even know there was this space,
Same. Mm-hmm.
until dealing with my mom. And then you realize, oh my gosh, so much is missing in terms of helping families. And then you step forward, if you're called to do so in whatever fashion. And yours is in terms of being an author and educator, which is absolutely fantastic with our kids, because I think they're a critical touch point and key point in our care. And they are so often ignored, and not purposely. We just kind of think we're protecting them. But
yeah, exactly.
But it causes so much confusion. Can you tell us a little bit more about your story with your dad?
Okay, so my dad was 51. He was very young when he was diagnosed with Lewy Body Dementia. And it wasn't even a Lewy Body Dementia diagnosis. It took us years to get that. We were told he had Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And we're like, how does somebody get like two diseases like this? How is that possible? But my mom was a pediatric nurse, and she went into full nurse mode and caregiver mode, and really did some digging and found some specialists and got the right diagnosis. So then when we heard it was, we were told it was Lewy body dementia, we realized no one else had ever heard of it. So we still told people, oh, he has Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, because when you would say Lewy body dementia, it was.
You know what? Oh no, it is recording. All of a sudden I wasn't showing the recording button, and I'm like, where'd it go? But
oh no. Okay.
Apparently they've made another upgrade, and, and
there it is.
Away. It isn't a staple there. Well, I can cut that out. That's what's nice about doing these things pre-recorded. You know, when you talk about being misdiagnosed, that still happens so frequently. That's the number one complaint that I hear, that the doctors a lot of times don't even know the different types of dementias. And for so long, Alzheimer's was kind of shoved down everybody's throat that it was the one and the only. Mm-hmm. And that's taken a long time to break and get noticed for things like Lewy body and frontal temporal and, CTE and, and the whole Parkinson's piece. I mean, it's just very frustrating. And then thank God your mom knew to push for a different diagnosis and see what's going on. Because most people don't even know that there are other things that they should look into until maybe they get on a chat room, or a support group. And then they're like, oh, I didn't know. And then they as families start digging more information. So it's kind of a backwards system.
It is. And what I find is it's great and it's sad at the same time. I found that the most the best place to get information is in the online forums like Facebook. And because it spreads and you find people in the community and things like that. But it's kind of backwards. It should come from your healthcare provider first, and then you go seek it out, those support groups. But it seems like a lot of people make those connections and put the pieces together through those online support groups.
Yeah, people are really empowered. Well, they're so authentic because they're looking for answers, and they know if they want answers, they have to be truthful.
Yes.
And there's actually people that listen, because I think a lot of times when we go to our doctors, we don't feel they listen because it's like, okay, your 10 minutes is up. Next,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
Because of insurance time constraints and things. Now, you mentioned you've been able to kind of find your purpose through this, and I'm sure there was a lot of pain and challenges that you went through. Can you share some of that with our audience?
Sure. Yeah. I like I said, it's always hindsight, right? But when you're going through it, and I would see my kids who, with Lewy body dementia, there's a lot of hallucinations and a lot of personality changes. And, as a parent, you're, like you said, I think it's so true. You want to protect them from it. So they're seeing these changes in grandpa, and I'm seeing some fear, and I'm trying to kind of find that balance of letting them, still be letting that connection still be there, because they also would bring out the best in my dad when he would see them. Sometimes it would snap him out of it. But then there were times when I would see that fear in my kids' eyes, and it's because that's not how grandpa acts. So you really are struggling between finding that balance. So I think that for me, that was huge of finding that, those things. And then looking back now I can say how to have that conversation with kids and how to safely discuss it, and how beneficial it is for the dementia patient to have that connection with kids. A lot of them will go to taking baby dolls and caring for them, because that nurturing and that caring is still in there, especially with women. It's there. It's masked by the dementia and the changes, but that person is still the same. And it's so important to find those ways to make that connection with that who that person was.
Yeah, that's so true. I had a colleague, Colin, over in Australia, and they actually did a study on the dolls. And they said they were shocked on how much men stepped in and stepped up when they were given the opportunity. But we have our stigmas of, oh no, they're not going to want to do that. But he said there were times they would be sitting at a table, and if something looked like, coffee was going to spill, I mean, they just all hopped to it. It was just instinctively to protect that baby, and then to nurture the baby, calm the baby down. And, but it's interesting to see how our societal stigmas and myths have such are so ingrown within us, and how that affects our perceptions and our creativity of what's even possible, with that. You also mentioned, which I love, because that was going to be my next question, about the joy. And I saw that with my own mom, how the little ones, her eyes would just glisten in her smile and her laughter and her giggle. I mean, she loved being around the kids. And to me, I found part of it was, they simply know how to play, that's their zone. And it made me realize, as an adult, I kind of lost that ability to be that carefree.
Right.
And that I needed to learn that back. And as the disease progressed, my mom got, and I know some people don't like this, and I don't really care, because this is my perception of our thing. But as the disease progressed, she got more childlike, but it was more joyful. It was not as restrictive. She wasn't paranoid about what someone else was going to think. And I think, as an adult, I want that back.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Because and again, those are things we have learned as we've aged, and not all of them are as productive, as we think they were, to control and organized and all of those types of things. So, and I also find kids are creative. They're not afraid of trying. They're not worried about failing. They're just trying to be inclusive and do it in ways that a lot of times we wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah. Life through the eyes of a child is a beautiful thing. It really is. And I think if we could get back to that, like you said, more before we're in that, before we're in a position that we have to, if we could realize it now and get back to some of that innocence and kindness and compassion, the world will be a better place.
And what's nice is, that can be played in all areas of life, not just dementia.
Yeah.
But that is a skill set, a soft skill set that is so overlooked until you're like in crisis. And then you realize those small little touch points they're like fairy dust, and you don't even realize that they're missing, because everyone gets so structured in doing the tasks. Not worried about the feeling or the connection.
It's true. It's so easy to get lost up, because, there's no sugarcoating it. It's heavy. It's difficult. It's hard. And you're in survival mode. I think when you're a caregiver, it's like, I just have to get through the day. And this has been, this has been a struggle, and that's been an obstacle. And, you just get like overwhelmed by all of that. But I do tell people, like, there are blessings, and you can't miss those, because they're easy to miss in the moment. You'll look back after you've been through it all and be like, oh my gosh, remember that? What a great moment that was, or what a big blessing that was, or that moment of clarity that we had that conversation, like how great that was. So I really try to get people to realize, like, you have to just hang on to those blessings or moments of joy or moments of clarity. Journal them, write them down. It's easy for it to all get overshadowed by the hard things. But sometimes I think those little things are what will get you through.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think, when people ask us, they're always asking us for the hard stuff, because they expect it to all be hard. Because again, that's what we've been taught. This is a horrible thing, and no one should have to do that. Well, you know what? There's a lot of horrible things that nobody really wants to do. But in those detours, they're to me, with my journey with my mom, I mean, I wouldn't have given that up for anything, because she taught me so many beautiful life lessons. I wouldn't have learned, I don't think, life without that. Now, I wouldn't wish this on anyone to learn those lessons, but I think people like you and I, you had talked about seeing the joy, and, I think it's recognizing, accepting it. And I also think it's sharing it, so that we can start pushing some of those stigmas down. Like, there's no good in caregiving. You're just going to be drained. You're going to be burnt out.
Yeah.
You're going to be overwhelmed, and let people know no matter how small those things are, they become huge.
Yeah, yeah. And it goes back to letting our kids watch that process, because who's going to be taking care of us one day is our children. So how we're handling it is setting it up for how they're going to handle it one day. So, and a lot of people be like, I don't want to be a burden to my children, but I didn't feel like my dad was ever a burden to us. It was hard. Yeah. But I'm grateful that we had that opportunity, and I wasn't there like 24/7 because my parents lived 5 hours away. So it's easy for me to say that because I saw what my mom took on. Um, but I think it made my kids better people by seeing it. I think it made my siblings and myself better, because you learn that compassion, and you learn what really matters, what really is important in life. It's a tough lesson, but it's an important lesson.
Well, and it really shows the commitment to relationships that is something we don't really talk about,
Hmm.
and I think you're right. Those life lessons that might be unspoken, but
Hmm.
seen and taken in to consideration. And I think a lot of people don't think about, what about me if I need help? Who,
Hmm.
who, if anyone's going to stick around?
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
So, yeah. Well, and I think it also prepares us, like if it happened to you or me, I think it also prepares us to accept help
Hmm.
when
Yeah.
we've seen, the benefits of those helping get and feel for ages. When you volunteer or when you help somebody out, that person receives more than what they give. And I've seen that repeatedly during the caring journey as well. But again, it's not talked about.
No. Mm-mm.
And yet it's so critically important that this isn't a one-way street.
I agree. And I think it goes back to, the caregivers are such nurturing people, usually, by nature. That's who's going to step in and take that role. It's important to give that love back to yourself too. A lot of caregivers get burnt out because they're so focused on, again, that the everyday overcoming the challenges. But you have to step back and say, I matter too, and find the little things. They don't have to be huge things. Buy yourself flowers and set them on the counter if that brings you happiness. Buy yourself, something that will like really just brighten your day a little bit. Sit down and watch a movie, or have a hot cup of coffee and sit on the patio outside and look outside. Whatever it is that will bring you that little snippet of joy in that moment, it's important to make time for it.
Well, yeah, because if we're not full, we can't care to the best of our ability. And I learned that the hard way, because I was so busy being busy with everything to do. I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
recognize I was like a hollow soul, just
Mm-hmm.
just functioning and doing tasks
Mm-hmm.
until I agreed to meet friends who never gave up on me and would ask me for coffee every week. And I would say no, 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 no. And then I went and I went with the intent of telling them, stop bugging me. I just
Oh,
really
wow.
don't have time for this in my life right now.
Right.
And I stayed for, it was over 2 hours, and we laughed and we cried. And it wasn't until I met with them that I found out how empty I was, because they filled me back up.
That's huge. Like, that's something that, in the moment you're that's not like on the forefront of what you're thinking and getting through, but that you can pass that on now in the space to other people. It's so important.
Oh, it was massively huge, and it's something people don't talk about. I was selling real estate at the time, and I had a client years later. I don't know, we were sitting around having a beer someplace, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you've got the most beautiful eyes." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you." And she says, "I can't believe your eyes are that crystal blue." And I said, "But they've always been like that." And she goes, "No, Lori, you've sold multiple homes for us, and your eyes were pitch black."
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I said, "Really?" And I said, "Well, I was really in the thick of things." She says, "That took a toll." She said, "You were always kind. You did an excellent job. That's why we always came back to you. We loved working with you. But I just want you to know there was a physical difference that we didn't even know to say anything about, because we only knew you with dark eyes."
Mm, wow.
I
That gives me
know.
goosebumps. That's
I
crazy.
know. It's it,
Yeah. You
yeah.
don't realize how it manifests and your physical. Um, and how important it is to fill your cup. It really is.
Yeah. And so, I always kind of check in the mirror, like, okay, do my eyes have that twinkle or not?
Yeah.
And that's kind of a sign for me at times now, which sounds kind of silly because you'd think I would just feel it and know, but those things, they just happen kind of slowly and kind of irk their way in and rob you. And you don't even know it. You don't know to protect yourself or even how to protect yourself or feed yourself. Because no one, I mean, I'm 65. No one ever taught us that,
Yeah.
growing
No,
up.
no. And that's what I was helping care for my father-in-law at one point, not with dementia, with something else. And a doctor look, and again, in the thick of it, you've got kids going and running to practices and going to doctor's appointments. And the doctor said, you matter too. And that's not something caregivers hear enough, I don't believe, but you do, you matter too. And that so important to remember that.
Exactly. Well, we've given, people some tips, but I wanted to say, if someone is listening that's feeling really hopeless right now, are there like 3 things that you would tell them to maybe do or try when they're caring for a loved one if they're just feeling drained and kind of lost?
Yeah, I think connecting with others, especially others who are going through it. Like I said, there's some amazing Facebook support groups that are the kindest people, and so supportive. And I've seen people post after a loved one has, gone through something or been diagnosed, and people just flock to help them. So I think finding support groups and connecting with other people who get it, who understand. You were lucky to have those friends that really stuck through and kept pushing you. But a lot of people will retreat, and so then the friends will also retreat, and that's easier sometimes. Sometimes you just need to take that step back, but you have to connect with someone who gets it, someone who understands what you're feeling and what you're going through. That's a huge one. And the finding something that brings you a little bit of purpose. And it might not always be advocating. I know a lot of the people that are doing the most amazing things in this space, like yourself, it's because of what they've been through. So finding that something that's going to make you feel like you're giving back and giving to others, outside of being the caregiver, I think is huge. And then I do believe self-love. Love yourself. Find moments of respite. Practice self-care. So important for like hope and resilience. Look for those blessings. I'm a see the glass half full kind of girl. I always have been, but I know when you're going through that, when you're in the depth of that, it is so hard to pull yourself up into that mentality, into that mindset. So you have to find someone who's going to help you do it, whatever that takes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The one of my favorite support groups out there is the Memory Cafe, where the person with dementia and the family member can attend, because both people lose their sphere, and their friendships. A lot of times, even family members pull away, and it's a way for and I say couple because the majority of people are living together or married, but not all. But it's a way for them to still do couples things that are normal, to have friends together. And I know when I started that, I mean, I got pushback going, well, they can't be in the same room, because it's just going to be, a complaint session. And it's like, we can talk about these things openly and honestly and learn how other people are dealing with this. And we need to know how the other side thinks and how they feel as well, in order to come up with good alternatives. But I found those friendships so deep. Same with the online chat rooms. I mean, people get up at 3 a.m. because they can't sleep, and somebody around the world is going to be there for them.
Yeah, so true.
Which is pretty cool. And they talk about those things being lifelines. You talked about the self-love and, finding purpose other than, just caregiving, which I think is important. And I never knew how important that was. I cared for my dad, who also had brain cancer. And so I had my mom with dementia, my dad with brain cancer.
Wow.
And when he died, I was so lost, because to me, that's all I was. Even though I was a mom, I was a wife, I was a volunteer, I was an educator, I was an employer, I sold real estate, all of those, I did all of those things. But the main thing I thought I was this caregiver for my mom and dad, and now I lost half of that. And I was like, oh, who am I? I mean, people are like, well, what do you like to do? I don't know. I for so many years, I stepped aside of anything. I mean, that didn't even enter my mind. What did I like to do? There was not time for that. But you do have to consciously make time for that. Otherwise, it's pretty devastating to go through a loss at that level.
Yeah.
And for me, I kept looping my dad's death over and over and over, because when he was dying, I had my hand on his chest and I could feel his energy literally go up my arm. And I just kept reliving that over and over. I couldn't get out of that. And, it was a lovely, passionate moment, but it was like I couldn't, it took me over a year to kind of move past that. And then I decided I almost have to travel and try new things all by myself, just to figure out, who am I? What do I want to be? Because I couldn't do it with other people around me. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally.
But I just needed that quiet space that, maybe I was afraid of before. I don't know.
Right. And what a way to honor your parents now by giving back to caregivers. I know your dad wasn't with dementia, but I think a lot of the caregiving things like kind of overlap, and you're definitely honoring their memory by being such a light for so many other people who are going through it now. Yeah.
Well, and there are so many similarities. I'm sure you found that with your father-in-law too. Your dad. There's just a lot of basic things. And then, I pull back even further going, well, someone doesn't have to be sick. They can be healthy, and I can still be in a relationship, and all this stuff can help me in those things too.
Exactly.
To be kinder and less judgmental, and those types of things.
I was going to say that it kind of is that there is that progression. Like you said, when you're going through it, you're in survival mode. You're not thinking of it. And then it became like, okay, there's a Lewy Body Dementia walk, like right across the street from where I live. I can get involved there. So then it became like advocating and awareness, which became very important because I see all these children who are going through what my kids went through. And I don't know if they have anybody telling them like, you're going to get through this. You're going to be okay. So for me, then it kind of morphed into like writing this book. I wrote a children's book that would be a resource for others. And then that really put me in the realm to like start writing other children's books, to help, because I wanted to help kids, not just with Lewy Body Dementia who are experiencing that, but I want to help kids who are going through any type of diversity. And then that morphed into like a book about compassion and kindness, because when we go back to all the beginning of everything, it is that any adversity we're going through, we need to approach it with empathy and kindness and compassion, and instilling that in a child at a young age can really determine how they're going to handle these things that we're dealing with as adults as when they get older. So it kind of became a full circle, thing for me.
Yep. Well, and for people who are just tuning in right now, we are talking with author Jennifer Randazzo, and she is just incredible. She's written 3 books. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into those in just a moment, but I always like to give a plug for my webmaster, which is Q for Good. They are compassionate, very social conscious, and they speak at our level. If you're a novice, I mean, I've been doing websites for a long time, and I probably know a lot more than some, but I don't want to know the black hole. I don't want to know the coding. I just want a company that works at my level and it communicates and meets deadlines. And they just do a fantastic job. So I know that can be hard to find. So, you can go to qforgood.com. And if you mention my name, they'll give you a 10% discount as well. And of course, a free consultation in terms of what your needs are. But Jennifer, let's go back to you, because I want to dive a little bit more into Grandpa and Louie, your book, but I also want to cover your other 2 books. One's about an elephant, one's about a frog, as well, because I think they all overlap and are useful tools to us. So tell us a little bit more about your first book, Grandpa and Louie.
So that was nothing like I said, never set out to do. I saw what my kids struggled with, And like this story was on my heart, and I wrote it for my kids. It's like it really addresses what grandpa is dealing with and what my kids were seeing with my grandfather. Like he would play with them and be fun, and then all of a sudden, he's a little standoffish, and the change that they're seeing physically and mentally. I wanted the kids to have a resource that would empower them to be like, okay, this is what grandpa's going through, or grandma, and it's not because of me. It's because this is where they're at with dementia, and I can't change it. It's not going to change, but there are things I can do. I can still connect with grandpa or grandma in these very special and intimate ways. And it also gives the child permission. Sometimes they need to step back, and that's okay too. We need to give the child the permission to be able to handle these things on their level. So I wrote the book, like I said, basically for my kids. And then I would go to these awareness walks, or the Lewy Body Dementia Walk, and see how many children were there that were affected by this disease. How many children had a grandparent, multiple children, families with multiple children that were dealing with this. And it really kind of like just led me down the path of publishing my story into a book. And then that kind of developed my love for writing children's books. I always loved to write, but never thought I would write children's books.
Well, and it's so cool. And you talk, what I love about the physical and the mental changes, but that gift of coming out and saying, this isn't because of you, this is a disease, and then giving the permission to step back, which I think is a good lesson for adults reading the book to children as well, because we don't always give ourselves permission to step back. And that was one of the other things you had talked about was, taking some respite moments, getting filled again, because when we're feeling tapped, that's going to show. And people with dementia still read our nonverbals, and they can see our frustration. They can see if we're exhausted. They can see all of those things, even though we think we're covering it up. They're much better at, I think, sometimes reading nonverbals than the average bear out there, because we take it for granted. And they're trying to, like they say, if someone is blind, the other senses kick into gear. I think that that's what happens when someone has dementia. Other things kick in to help them still put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah. And one thing I saw with not only with my own kids, but as I started to connect with other families that were going through it, that were reading the book, and the messages I would get as how helpful it was. And there is that grandparent grandchild connection is so strong that even though you may lose little glimpses of things, that connection is never broken. Even if that grandparent passes away, there's always that connection there. And I think that's important for kids to know that person may not always be with us, but they are always with us. And it's good for kids to realize that, and even us as adults to realize that they're always present in some way, whether it's the work that we go on and do, or the memories that we still laugh about, or the person that we became because of what we went through. But finding that purpose is all a part of what we went through with Lewy body dementia, or what other circumstances we went through. It shapes us.
Oh, for sure. Well, like with my daughter, she only knew her grandma with dementia. She didn't know the other grandma, and so she just kind of grew with her, but they would play at this intense level. I mean, just this authentic, intense level, and have so much fun. And then, like I would walk into the room as an adult, just kind of standing in the doorway, and my presence would change their energy.
Wow.
Because they felt I was judging, because adults do, or it's time to go now. Up, and they're both like holding up their art projects. My mom and my daughter, who was, played with her really intensely when she was little, like 3 to 7 years old. I mean, you couldn't tell who was prouder holding those things up, and that never went away. That bond was so strong and so beautiful. And it kind of, when I did that the first time, when I stepped into the room and they were both holding up their art projects, it just melted my heart. I thought, How beautiful is that to have?
Yeah.
And they were both proud of their own projects, but they were proud of each other's as well. There was just this togetherness. It's almost, you almost can't explain it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. And those are the blessings. Those are the blessings that we have to cherish and hold on to.
Yeah.
Those little moments. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can still see that clearly. And my daughter's like 36 now. So, I mean, that was years and years ago. My mom's been gone for 10. But it's
Wow.
still, every time I say that, it just warms my heart
Hmm.
to be able to see those beautiful moments. Now, why don't you talk to us about the empathetic elephant? What's that book about?
Okay. The Empathetic Elephant is about compassion. And it's going to be a mental health series. So, one thing I realized with when my dad had Lewy body dementia is it is a mental health issue. And if you've never been through it, it's dementia, yeah, but the things that he was going through, it's you're dealing with mental health issues,
Mhm.
and it's very hard and very scary. And there are so many issues that kids face today, challenges. Um, so the empathetic elephant is about an elephant who meets all of these animals in the jungle, and you don't realize it at the time, but they're all dealing with their own issues.
Mhm.
But the elephant finds a way to meet them where they're at with empathy and to help them. And she wants to be their friend, but they're dealing with their own stuff. But so she keeps coming back, kind of like your friends. The elephant keeps coming back and says, okay, I know that you don't have time to play with me, but here's something I can do to help you. And she meets them where they're at. And the next book is about a giraffe. Each animal will have their own book now, and you will realize what their issue was. The giraffe has body dysmorphia. So I hope that will speak to young girls who deal with things like that. The monkey has ADHD, the hippo has depression. So we are going to go circle back and address each of those issues in a new book. But it all starts with the empathy and compassion, so that so to explore those things. So that's why I started with that book first.
Oh, I love that it's going to be a series. Well, now what about the frog?
Okay.
Tell us what that stands for. And
So FROG stands for fully rely on God. And one thing that I've come to learn in my books, even though they're all very different, we have dementia, we have empathy, mental health issues, and now we have faith in that. But that book was inspired by a nun at my daughter's school. My daughter goes to Catholic school, and it was because she carries around a frog in her pocket and teaching the kids, like, no matter what you're going through, you can fully rely on God to get you through it. What I loved about that story is it's such a beautiful story, and she's such an amazing person. She's 90 years old and is still in the school every day with the kids and making a difference. But the intergenerational connection there, like, was really full circle for me, because you have someone in their 90s and you have kids who are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old with this true beautiful connection. And it's so important for kids to learn from, like we said, learning from their grandparents. We learn from each other, and I think the older people can take a lot from the kids, but the beauty of that connection really makes that story so special for me, because it was about her connection with the kids, and then that faith is what kind of united that. But the story for me is really, really special.
well, and it's all about not feeling alone
Yeah.
when you feel like no one else understands you.
Mm-hmm.
You've got that support.
Yeah.
And I
And
love
no
the
matter
frog.
what a kid is dealing through, if it was test anxiety, if it was problems at home, she would pull out a little frog in her pocket, or she had them in her office or everywhere, and just be like, you've got this. Fully rely on God, frog it, and it's just having that little mantra that kids can go back and go, okay, it's going to be okay. We go through some hard things, but we're very resilient, and we usually get through it on the other side, with the story to tell.
I'm seeing t-shirts and sweatshirts with frog it on it.
I have them, Lori. I have
Do
them.
you?
Yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that.
that's exactly what she said. I try to be careful with it, because frog it.
Mhm.
But that's what she would say. She goes, frog it and forget it. That's
Mhm.
it. So
Oh, I like that. I like that.
thank you.
Well, and it's simple and it's something all of us can do, but sometimes we just
Mhm.
need that nudge,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
reminder. with
Yeah,
that.
and it is simple. It's a simple but powerful message. And what I've done now with the book, and I have little frogs of my own that I keep in my pocket or in my purse. And when somebody's going through something, I'll take them and give them the book and give them a little tiny frog. And I have people send me pictures all the time, like the frog in the kitchen and the frog, by the nightstand, just as that reminder that whether it's Lewy body dementia or Alzheimer's or brain cancer or whatever thing that feels so heavy and hard right now, you will get through it. We will get through it.
And life is really a training ground. There's always going to be another, mine that we're going to have to maneuver around in so many different ways. So what great messages on that. Now, I wanted to ask you about being able to stay positive, but you really have found the joy in the journey, and I would imagine that really pulls you out of sadness and overwhelmness. But I'm sure you have your moments.
Yeah, I do. I do have my moments. It's easy. You're always pulling yourself out. I do feel like that because life is difficult. The world is difficult today. There's so much division in our world right now. So you really have to cling to that. You have to really fight to find the joy. And for me, it's family and faith and things like that, and helping others. And any time that you can help someone else out, I think it makes a big difference in your own life.
Oh, I totally, totally agree. Now, are there specific resources and networks that you have found helpful for, especially families dealing with Lewy body that you would recommend?
There are, and I have some of them on my website, but I will tell you the best resources I found are people like you who are doing it because they've been through it. There's just a whole nother level of like love behind it, and you're really like, you could feel it. It's a mission. It's like, we're going to help, we're going to make sure somebody else doesn't face what we faced, or that has the tools to get through it. I know your dementia map. It's great. It's really been a wonderful tool. So that's a huge one. I'm amazed by what you're doing in that space. It really, there aren't a lot of free resources out there for people, and that's a big one. Another one I found is called the Larry Gross Lewy Body Awareness Foundation. And that is something that two sisters have put together in honor of their dad who had Lewy body dementia. They do golf outings to raise money. And then they started doing care bags with resources in them. So, and they include my book in it if it's going to a family with kids, which like touched my heart so much. And they've driven cross country or flew cross country actually, and came to Philadelphia and went to an Alzheimer's committee. Like, they're just doing so many things in the space. I think it's going to be wonderful to watch where they go with that. So yeah, Larry Gross Lewy Body Awareness Foundation. Lewy Body Dementia Association is a huge one. That's who puts on the walk in my neighborhood every year. They've been doing that. I think this year was the 11th year. Her father had Lewy body dementia. The girl who runs the walk, her name is Tina Christie, and she has put this together. And it's just amazing to see, families come out, kids come out, and they walk, and it's a beautiful day. They do it every September. That's a great way to get involved. And then All's Authors is really, really good for people like me. If you have a story to tell and you want to share your story and write a book, and that's a great resource. Or if you're looking for books of other people who in that dementia space, whether it's Alzheimer's or Lewy body dementia, they have a great library of books on there. And they also do some things where they have, a package of books will go and into like certain offices and things like that. So it's like a resource. And then I think the biggest thing outside of those would be the Facebook groups. Lewy body dementia carers is one. I never see anything on there but love and kindness and people who really are so supportive of whatever it is. Like you said, even if it's 3 a.m. and you're dealing with feelings that you're having a hard day, somebody always jumps in and answers and gives you the resources you need and the support. So that's a big one.
Oh yeah, there's one called Lewy Body Dementia Resource Center. I think she's out of New York. That is just absolutely fabulous too. And then here in Minnesota, we have a gal who's part of our dementia friendly community in Roseville that has a Lewy body dementia. and they have it as a Minnesota support group, but I don't know if they've expanded because they've gone virtually now. So there might be some others that that come on with that. And she does also a radio show that, you know, and there's a few of those out there that are specific to Lewy body. I mean, I definitely cover, I've kept my name Alzheimer Speaks. I've talked about changing it to dementia, being broader, but I think I'm just branded well enough where people understand we're inclusive of everything. And sometimes that gets more complicated than not. But so much of this stuff, like we talked, overlaps, you know, and you know, you might have Lewy body today and it might be something else tomorrow, you know.
Right.
When my mom died, we actually did a autopsy and it showed, and we always were just told she had Alzheimer's, but it showed she had Alzheimer's, Lewy body, and Parkinson's.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So like you said, you don't know. You just don't know. So
Yeah.
it's good that you cover them all. It is. It's very important.
Yeah. And I hear so many people who are initially diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and then all of a sudden they're flipped to, no, it's mild cognitive impairment. And then they're like stamping their feet going, there's nothing mild about any of this, you know, they have the same symptoms. And then a few years later, it's something else. And a lot of them are saying probable, you know, whatever, because the doctors are realizing they really just don't know.
Right.
With some of this stuff, because it's such a baby disease. Well, Jennifer, this has just been such a great conversation with you. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to say to our audience?
We've covered a lot. I mean, I just want to say that, you know, I'm always out there. If I have an Instagram page and I love connecting with people. So if you message me, I will get back to you right away. I don't always have the answers, but I can always give you support and help push you in the right direction of where to find answers. But I think the biggest thing is connecting with people, and the scheme of this is really important.
Yeah. And people can go to your website, or they can they email you as well?
Yes. Email is all through my website, Instagram, Facebook. I'm everywhere. But I'm even in, like I said, I stay in the support groups, even though it's been 12 years. No, it's more than 12 years that since my dad passed. It's been, oh my gosh, now I'm thinking it's been so long. But I stay in the groups, and sometimes I'm like, I need to get out because it gets heavy. It feels hard. You relive it a lot of times. But then I'm like, if I do, I'm cutting that line to be able to help those people and offer, even, like I said, I don't know that I truly help, but I'm always ready to offer understanding and encouragement.
A lot of times people think, oh, we go because we're going to fix it. Nobody can fix it.
No.
We can support it. We can understand it. And we can help get you through it, but we can't really fix it.
No. Yeah.
We're still hoping for a cure for that. But in the meantime, there's a lot of things that we can do through social engagement, through compassion, through honest conversations, through validation of feelings that, you know, they're not good or bad. They just are. And
that's a huge one. Yeah. I think a lot of guilt. There's a lot of caregiver guilt. And I always tell people, if you're making that decision from a place of love, there's nothing malicious about that. There's nothing that you should feel guilty for, because you're doing the best you can with what you have. And it's not easy, you know.
Exactly. And we'll have all those links for people. I want to, just ask our audience, which I do every show, is to be a giver of hope and, help spread the word of these resources that are out there. It's simple. It doesn't cost you any money. It takes very little time. We're talking a click from a Facebook page or a Twitter or a blog or, wherever it might be, because getting that information from you, they might see, where from me or Jennifer, they might not. And we need to make this comfortable and acceptable and okay for the person in need to click on it, to be able to get to it. It's got to be easier. They shouldn't have to be searching things out and feeling it, because that just feels so isolating. And when you enter any of the dementias here, you don't know what you don't know, so you don't even know what to ask for. So,
Exactly.
you know, again, being a giver of hope and helping spread the word is just critically, critically important. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your
Thanks.
wonderful work. I can't wait to see your series as that grows. I just think
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate
absolutely
it.
fabulous. And again, everyone's story has an impact. You know, there are things that people are going to learn from the person having body issues to the ADHD, to memory loss, all of those things we will learn.
Yeah,
Because I think we all have little pieces of everything in us, you
I
know.
totally agree. Yeah,
Some just get a
totally
little
agree.
more amplified
Hmm.
at
Yeah,
different times.
yeah.
So again, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful week. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.